ready? Okay. I call the regular meeting of the Milliken Board of Trustees for August 28th, 2024 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Will the town clerk please call roll?
Trustee Beckman.
Here.
Trustee Lane.
Here.
Trustee Nix.
Here.
Trustee Orcutt.
Here.
Trustee Wakeman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Here.
Mayor Austin.
Here. Thank you. Next item on the list here is, does anyone have any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing no changes, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve agenda?
Second.
Town
Sorry,
clerk,
was that Trustee Beckman?
Yes.
town clerk, please call for a vote.
Trustee Lane.
Yes.
Trustee Nix.
Yes.
Trustee Wakeman.
Yes.
Trustee Beckman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Yes.
Mayor Austin.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Do we have anybody that wants to address the board tonight? If you just wave in, okay, so here's my little spiel for that. Citizens' comment is a point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the town board on any items except agenda items for which there is a public hearing. Public comment on public hearing items will occur during the scheduled public hearing. All comments should be directed towards the town board. There's a 3-minute limit per speaker. Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Who wants to go first? What brave soul is going to stand up? And it's Mr. Strain tonight that's going to come see us.
This podium, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Sorry, never really done this before.
That's good. Did you sign it at the front?
I did.
Okay, thank
Yep. My name is Stephen Strain, and I own Superior Diesel Service out of Milliken here. Really just coming, like this is the start of it, had some issues and went through the code, municipal code today, and kind of seen some discrepancies in the town, in the code. Specific section 82-40, or sorry, dash 30, B. Sorry, 3B would be better. And then 82-40, with truck parking and stuff like that. And basically, I guess what I'm trying to do tonight is to get on the agenda for the next board meeting, is to see if we can discuss this and maybe get this changed. Because in reality, medium duty trucks are not 8,000 pounds. Medium duty trucks are up to 26,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. Your average dually that a lot of people in this community drive, or your average diesel a lot of people in this community drive, is over 8,000 pounds. And per your code, cannot be stored on the street or in our private parking, our driveway. And then there's discrepancies on, it goes back to section 8-2-40, which clearly states that any 18-wheeler, and it describes it as a truck and trailer combo. Mm-hmm. Well, that's where I'm getting a little confused and everything like that. And so unfortunately, like, we have a lot of that. On my street, we call it Mechanics Row, because the majority of us are all mechanics, and we are all in field service. Sorry.
And what street is that?
South Rachel.
South
Yes.
Rachel. Okay, and so if I understand you correctly, and the town does not want semis parked on the
Yep.
road, it's the weight of the
so-
truck and a danger, so we have a parking lot for that, but you're saying
So
that your
there-
truck is a medium duty?
Medium duty, correct. So we're a service truck.
Okay,
So we go to our customers and fix the machine there, because like most of the machines, like on heavy equipment, you can't really, if they break down, you can't get them into a shop. You're talking cranes and stuff like that for the size of equipment anymore. And so you have to, we don't have to, but we utilize the option of going to the customers which is a better service, you know what I mean? And a lot, especially for businesses, because it's a lot less overhead. We don't necessarily have to have the shop. We have a truck that has all the tools in it.
Got
And
it.
I do have a spot down there at the yard. The only problem with that is it's unsecure. I have $100,000 in tools on my truck alone, let alone my employees that have $100,000 in an unsecured lot. I've already had a trailer stolen out of there. So I can only imagine how fast, you know what I mean? And they're not, those trucks aren't bulletproof. They're a couple pry bars and you'll get into them, you know? And so we need to figure out I hope we can come to some compromise on how to change this so it benefits everybody. I understand nobody wants an 18-wheeler parked in front of their house, you know what I mean, with a truck and trailer.
Right.
I totally get that. But here in Milliken, we are a working blue-collar community. And we're trying to actually like put a code in that's a lot of people will be affected by this and enforce it, and it's gotta change.
Okay, so Administrator Powell, can you pull together our police department and?
Yeah, I spoke to Mr. Strain
Yep.
earlier today.
Okay.
So, yes. So we'll look at the code.
Okay?
I did tell you I'd research it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I will be out of the office, just so you know, for the next couple of days, but, and then Monday's a holiday, but the chief and I, we'll get together and look at the code.
Perfect. I don't know what my next step is to get on like the agenda to like talk about it and discuss it.
This is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And if we see that there's a reason to change what's currently in our ordinance,
Okay.
then it will come before the board and as an amended version.
Okay. Because what I was thinking about doing was maybe doing a poll in the community of like, hey, guys, like how many of you guys like drive like little box trucks or even like the utility trucks or plumber trucks, and all of that stuff is overweight. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not just mechanics. It's all these guys that are blue collar.
So do you have like a dually service truck?
So I have
Roughly?
a Peterbilt 335.
Okay.
So it is medium duty, and that was, so I'm originally from Wyoming, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So I've been in a service truck for 15 of those years. And that is what brought me to Milliken, was the ability to park my truck here. And when I originally bought my house, I went through that code because my realtor, she's like, hey, you need to really check this and talk about this. And it literally just stated 18-wheelers. And so I don't know when this code changed, and I was unaware of it. But like back 8 years ago, when I bought my house, it really did say just 18-wheelers.
Are you getting tickets?
No, so we had the code enforcement come today and talk about it. And part of my goal here is not just for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's for everybody, or the people that don't have the time. I'm kind of benefited by running my own business that I can make time for this type of stuff. But it's the other people that don't, you know what I mean, that don't have a voice in it really, that
Understood.
need to be changed for them.
There's a big range in the service trucks.
Yep,
Could you maybe like, when you come back,
yep,
have some pictures and say, this is what weight this is, and
Yep.
kind of give us a pictorial so we can see the range
Yep.
and how much we're willing to say, yeah, or that's too big.
yep.
Because I know there's some that are as big as semi-trucks.
And there is, and so
Yeah.
most of the time the difference is like an 18-wheeler. Once they go from medium duty to heavy duty, is they'll have a dual axle on the back, like an 18-wheeler, instead of a single axle, like for example, the box trucks that are down across the road by the railroad tracks here. Those all have like a single axle in the rear, and 18-wheelers have two axles in the rear. And that's really like in heavy duty and medium duty, that's the line. Is you go-
Something so we can see,
Yep, but I will, yes.
it'd be nice,
Yep,
it'd be
I
helpful
can
to
totally
see
do
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
think
we'll-
too, like, I'm totally
Yep.
I don't know anything about this, but I know that like roads are rated,
Yep.
right, for certain weights. So I think that is probably part of it as well, right?
Yep, so most of the roads around here, and he might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, should be weighted for medium-duty trucks. Because a medium-duty, there's no difference between my truck and Excel Energy coming in and changing light poles.
Right.
Okay.
So
So-
we'll see what the staff recommendations are, but my question is, Administrator Pell, would we be able to suspend any type of addressing this for a couple of weeks until we get a chance to look at it?
Absolutely. Yep.
We'll
Perfect.
suspend looking at it.
I appreciate you guys.
Sure.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
coming
you for
down.
coming.
Okay, let's see who wants to chat with the board next. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name's Nick Tucker. Most of you probably know me or might have seen an email floating around somewhere. I'm here just so you get used to seeing my face. I'm a big proponent of common law and returning our nation to the law of the land, which has been subverted since 1871. Okay? And it impacts you all, everyone up here, because you guys are upholding a municipal form of government, okay? Which under common law lacks jurisdiction, lacks authority, okay? And the basis of which funds it is being contradicted by utility billing practices, okay? The common person, the living man, living woman, okay, we're out here. We understand our rights. We understand the way government should behave, okay? These aren't threats up here. I'm here to help each and every one of you. It's a rescue mission of the highest order. Everybody, everyone's lost at sea up on this board. There's a reason we've watched a corporatized mafia thrive in our community while our citizens took the shaft. And I'm here to help you all as a government become the government your community deserves. And not the government that the corporatized mafia has designated. That has to stop immediately. Okay? I'm going to continue to be here to support each and every one of you through it. Every one of you. I don't care. I'm very well aware of how corporatized blackmail works, especially in this community. The cure to the blackmail is public awareness. And we're not going to stop until it's satiated. It's gaining traction every day. I want to implore each and every one of you up here to start doing the research, but you cannot ignore it any longer. It's a movement sweeping this country, sweeping this world, and it's all surrounding the rights of the living man and the living woman. And I've got a feeling some of you know exactly what I'm talking about up here, okay? Thanks very much for your time, and again, I mean that genuinely. I am here to support each and every one of you through it.
Just
Okay.
real quick, did you state your address for the
I've
record?
got it listed. I'm a pretty colorful resident here in town, so you guys can find me. And the reason I will continue to be here is because these corporatized relationships have put people at risk, severe risk. You're looking at one and you're looking at two others here sitting in this chair, and they're juvenile members, okay? If you need a reintroduction of what I'm talking about, I'm happy to send an additional email, but I can promise you justice is being sought. Justice will be granted to those that have had their rights usurped. We're not going to take it anymore, okay? And once again, town of Milliken, you guys have some amazing residents here, and it's your responsibility to be the amazing government they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person? Who else would like to address the board? That's it? Okay. All righty. Citizens' comments are now closed. Does anybody have any comment or discussion on the meeting minutes of July 24th, 2024? I'll take a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I second.
Town clerk, please call for a vote.
Trustee Nix.
Yes?
Trustee Wakeman.
Yes.
Trustee Beckman.
Yes.
Trustee Lane.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Yes.
Trustee Orcutt.
Yes.
Mayor Austin.
Yes.
Motion carried.
This is interesting.
Wasn't here. So.
Any questions on the paid list of bills? We all good with those? Okay. We will move on now to the town administrator's report. Administrator Powell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and trustees. On August 21st, the town received the official documentation from the Department of Local Affairs on our $1 million grant for the alluvial well blending project. So that's exciting, another project.
Congratulations.
I just wanted to point out Parks did a great job getting things cleaned up around town. I mean, they do an amazing job already. Keith and I drove around the other day, which we try to do as often as we can. And, even just driving down Green Street, not seeing any weeds and the rock that we used to fight with continually. The town looks incredible. And I have to say, Keith and his crew do a great job maintaining all of our properties. But they did an extra great job cleaning up areas around town for Beef and Bean Day celebration. Rick and I have met with a few different phone providers with the goal of finding a service a little more reliable than our existing service. So I think we found one that we really like and receives high ratings, but we haven't quite nailed it down yet. But it'll soon be coming, one service or another, to replace the one that we currently have. We don't need our police department without phones ever. So the Ehrlich Lake Pump Station, we received the controls for it. What we're waiting on are the pumps and Xcel Energy. So it depends on when we can get all those other components together to make this thing work. But it will be operational, I'm assuming, before next spring. The new blower for the wastewater treatment plant arrived. If you remember, we came to you for purchasing that, and we're just waiting to get scheduled for installation on that. Also, I just wanted to point out with the recent promotions of the 2 officers to sergeant, we're looking at, so currently Sergeant Jan Deegan is the police sergeant. He'll probably be moving into a detective investigator position once our 2 sergeants, new sergeants, have a little more training and so on and so forth. So Rick's an excellent detective and investigator. So I think we'll have a very well-rounded police department. So anyway, do you have any questions?
So the position of detective and investigator, is that full-time or is that?
I would say it's a full-time position.
Oh, yeah.
Really? That, for our little town, I guess that's kind of surprising.
Our little town isn't so little, and you have people that come in from out of here, so,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So when he's not doing that, if there's time when he is caught up, will he be out on the streets or what will he be
Oh,
doing?
yeah, I mean, we would utilize him to the fullest. I mean, we only have so many officers, but it's a good position for him to fill in, because he's probably the best one at it that we have,
Okay.
so,
All right.
most experience. Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our town staff, from administration all the way through our Parks and Streets Department and Water, Wastewater, all came together for a wonderful Beef and Bean Day celebration. There was a little blip in the fireworks. We had a mortar detonate in the rack, so yeah, that was a little pause in the celebration. Overall, though, things went fairly well. We had a lot of volunteers come out. We have some new volunteers on the committee, and certainly a great celebration for the town by the town residents. So all the volunteers and all the hard work is much appreciated. And thank you very much. When are my Christmas lights going up? Just kidding. Just kidding. When? November 1st. Really? I'll be looking forward to that. But in the meantime, I do want to say thank you to everyone for your participation in our Beef and Bean Day celebration. So, all right. With that being said, we can move on. We have nothing on the consent agenda. Action agenda. We have authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with Connecting Point for support of the town's network, servers, data, PCs, etc. Presenting is Cheryl Powell, Town Administrator.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and trustees. A while ago, I believe back in maybe June, July, we spoke about the gaps that are in our current processes for our network and so on, security gaps, essentially, and other items. And so prior to that discussion, Rick and I had reached out to Scott Warner, who was here. So if you have any questions, he's been kind enough to join us. We reached out to Scott Warner with Connecting Point to talk to him about it, and they did an evaluation of our server. I don't know all the technical terms, so but we have considerable gaps in our, that leaves us open for potential major problems. So anyway, I'd like to do a contract with Connecting Point. We've used them before. They've been in business for a long time. They have a very good reputation. They're local. And in order to take those challenges away from us, and they can keep us more secure. If you have any specific questions, I would recommend Scott come up to the podium and you could ask him those.
Please
if you
come
don't
join
mind.
us.
I'm not an IT person.
Sure.
Can you tell?
So this was quite a presentation that we had at CML, Colorado Municipal League. A couple of us were in that talking about data security and how even small towns now are being targeted ransomware. If they can get, $3,000 or $5,000 out of a town, but take a town down for like 18 months.
Yeah.
Are you seeing much of this?
Yeah, by the way, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And just so you know, Cheryl and Rick have been fantastic to work with, and really have appreciated the opportunity to engage and take a deeper look. But to your point, you are not in a vacuum here as a municipality. In fact, you're part of the business community, which is anymore. The technology landscape is just evolving rapidly, right? So, but even more so a municipality, you all have fairly important data. You have a police department. You have a lot of, you collect payment. So there's utility and public works. There's a lot that can happen that kind of cybersecurity vulnerabilities can set yourselves up for kind of bad stuff happening. And at the end of the day, municipalities are falling more and more into what I would call like pre-regulatory situation where I don't think, in my honest opinion, I don't think we're that far from local governments being under regulation to say this is what IT has to look like. So we came in and we work with, our standard client is, small to medium-sized businesses who have between 25 employees on up to 100. That's our standard customer. So you all fall fairly right into that target demographic. And so from an IT perspective, we want to make sure that the foundations of your network and your cybersecurity posture are taken care of. And so for us, there are some fairly, obvious areas to create and shore up what I would call unnecessary risk for the town. And I kind of detailed that in our assessment. But what I would say is the town right now is behind, but the good news is a lot of it's tool driven. So there's lots of tools that if you had an IT department, or if you were the city of Fort Collins or Greeley, or a larger IT network, they're just going to have those tools to manage and secure the network. Cheryl and Rick have done a really nice job keeping things going and administrating the existing network. But the next thing that they'll do as they go and grow is to say, well, how do I get more efficient? How do I bring great tools to make sure that our gaps are covered? And so that's really where our proposal comes in, is to say, okay, well, here's what we're going to do to more effectively secure the endpoints, to make sure that we're administrating the network more effectively, that we're going to actually protect data to a more standardized degree. It's, at the end of the day, if your data is not secure, to your point, that's where the town ends up in a situation where someone makes a mistake, or a bad actor gets in, and yes, you end up in a position where you don't have access to your data, and you have to fall upon, whether it's paying a ransom, or leaning on downtime to get yourselves back up and running. So at the end of the day, I think it's actually I told both these guys, it's very encouraging, because you have a great team and great staff, and the size of the environment is very appropriate to shore things up pretty quickly. But what I will say, and your police department is going to continue to see this more and more, the CJIS standards are evolving quickly. I'm sure you saw the most recent updates to the CJIS standards. I mean, essentially, there are things that, for example, having multi-factor authentication in place across your organization, and where there is not clear separation between the town network and the police department network in all capacities. They're even calling for some more extreme, log monitoring, and making sure that there's efficient command and control over the data that's there. So what you all as a town board of trustees should expect from IT is that we should be in front of you at least twice a year, saying these are the standards, here's how we're evolving, here's how we keep up to speed with it. And I told Rick and Cheryl, I mean, the biggest thing that you can expect to hear back from us on in 2025 is a project to be able to implement multi-factor authentication effectively across both the PD and the town. That's a huge area of weakness and opportunity, to give yourself a safety net, along with better endpoint security and data protection practices. And so again, I feel very comfortable and confident that we can help move the town technology forward. And again, you have a great team in place, and I'm really excited to have our team engage with you all. So thank you very much. And whether it's coming back in front of y'all or side conversations, whatever, happy to share in more depth. So what other questions?
Questions from the board. Trustee Wakeman.
Can you just comment real quick, and maybe Cheryl, either of you comment maybe about what kind of resources you bring in terms of equivalent manpower, if we would look to hire a position, and maybe those tools you talk about from a resource standpoint, maybe just financially for us to gauge a little bit about what we would be looking at to hire somebody, on staff versus using you as a contractor, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great question, and I love working with small businesses because that's the same question they're asking. And I told Cheryl and Rick, in our world, the number's at about 75 users. We start seeing who have no IT. We start seeing businesses saying, man, we kind of need some internal resource. We typically take the lion's share of network management, security, support, until someone has about 75 users on staff. Beyond that, it really makes sense to have someone here on staff to be able to do the things that a managed IT services provider wouldn't do. We wouldn't be good at setting up the boardroom with technology and, messing with door access control and application stuff that's very unique to the town. That's not our strength. But what a smart and savvy IT person should say is, once they get to this point, they say, how do I gain efficiency? Well, it's through not doing the things that an outsourced contractor can do really, really efficiently. Maintenance, administration, security, data protection, augmented support. So the reality is, as Rick and the team and the town staff need help, and Rick's still going to take the lion's share of the day-to-day support. But as he doesn't have time, or he gets over his skis on something, or if he's got questions, or we identify something that's higher level that we need to step in, we can augment him. And I really believe that you guys are double your size away from outgrowing a managed IT services provider and an internal resource. That should provide you a significant amount of scale. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Yeah, that's 75.
That's really, now.
It sure depends on what kind of.
It depends a little bit, but for
Yeah.
your environment, that rings to be about true. And I bet if you asked Rick, he'd be like, yeah, there's a lot of issues that I'm just chasing, so I don't have a lot of time to do the proactive stuff, or I don't have the ability to know all the tools to create the efficiency, nor would it make sense to buy them.
Sure. Then can you maybe just comment a little bit about your team and
Yeah.
what kind of who you bring with you?
Yeah. So if I brought our whole team with us, we'd have about 25 employees. So a little bit of background. My dad started our company in 1982, and so we've been in the marketplace for a long time, and we have been in the managed IT services space since about 2001. So as it relates to how we engage with clients, I always say how we help identify with our clients what good looks like. We've really been doing that a long time to help people, because there's IT companies that kind of come in and say, what do you want? And I think the best way to engage with growing organizations who really need technology to do what they need to do, they need a foundation, and they need a team of experts to say, here's what good looks like, and here's how we implement it with you. And so we have 42 years of experience and 25 plus employees, and we manage networks from if you drop about 100-mile hula hoop around here, that's really our marketplace. We're a regional firm, but I sure love working closer to home than further away. And I was telling Matt earlier that being able to work in communities around where we live and work and play, it just helps us strengthen our communities to make sure that we're not helping, we're not letting gaps live without identifying them. So again, we really appreciate the opportunity, and I'll tell you, as the owner of the business, we have an agreement. I don't really care what the agreement says. If we're not doing a good job for the town, and they don't feel like there's value, we won't hold you all to anything. That's just not how we do business. So our job is to serve you and work with you, and again, it's a relationship, so we have to be able to communicate and understand and work back and forth. So we view ourselves as an extension of your team.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Trustee Lane?
Approximately how many clients do you serve?
Give or take 100 networks that we manage.
Okay.
So it's funny, I say this a lot, so it takes a little bit of explaining to understand that, because the question is that a lot or a little? So we used to work with everybody. Back when we started the business, if we sold a toner cartridge to someone, they were our client. Anymore, the only way that we engage with businesses is if they take on our full engaged model. Our full tool stack, our proactive processes, that is the only way we engage. We learned a long time ago that the only way to create consistent outcomes was to be able to apply our methodology consistently. That's a much more mature way to approach doing business. So when it comes, so if we compared our fully managed stack of clients to another managed IT services provider, we're one of the larger MSPs in the region from a fully managed client perspective. I don't have much interest in selling toner cartridges to people, but different business model.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Nix?
I have no questions.
Okay. Trustee Beckman?
No questions, thanks.
Trustee Orcott?
Do you serve any other municipalities currently?
We do.
Okay.
Would you?
No, I was just curious if you had like a quick explanation on the differences between servicing municipalities versus small businesses.
Absolutely. 100%. There's very distinct differences. A lot of them lie in the police department engagement, and then on top of that, I would say the dynamics of public works and some of the organizations that have SCADA systems, and there's just kind of an interesting convergence of technologies when you work with a municipality versus working with an accounting firm. And so but the cool part about a municipality, especially one that is smaller, is that those entities really have to be managed with a very simple and straightforward mechanism. You can't have just wild and crazy stuff, all over the place. You have to be able to kind of pull it together in a sensible way. But I would say the main difference is the police departments and how their influence on the rest of the town impacts security, kind of the data access control, user administrative privilege, stuff like that is really important. Like I said, the biggest thing over time, if I was to paint a picture, the town should really be kind of driving down a road where the police department has totally separate infrastructure, totally separate data sources, totally separate everything, so that they can operate inside of their own container, if you will. There's some of that going on today already, but it's creating more distinct boundaries of how that police department will operate.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean?
Could you briefly talk about the waiver of software support liability?
Yeah, so the reason that we have a waiver of software support and liability is, if you think about our clients, we have, I bet we support or we come across 250 plus different applications. And so what we say is we are not the expert in that software package, and therefore there needs to be a support agreement in place so that if we run into something on the network side, we can stand next to you and reach out to your software provider and say, hey, we're trying to execute on XYZ issue, and they can work with us, and their support will work side by side. It just eliminates the need for us to be the end-to-end expert and support mechanism for any application that comes across our desk.
Where my question really resides is primarily with Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the underpinning of a lot of operating.
Yeah.
And how you interplay with them.
Yeah, so we're a Microsoft partner, and so we have 24/7 unlimited access to Microsoft support. So that kind of is something, we do a lot of that. And if there are issues that we're running into on the Microsoft side, we help with that. But when you subscribe to Microsoft Office, or when you subscribe to a XYZ server operating system, you're signing up for that support. So we have what we need to be able to do that for you.
Well, I understand. I'm thinking about Cassell. That wouldn't be an area of expertise.
Yeah, but we actually have a lot of exposure to Cassell, working with other municipalities and Laserfish and Bluebeam and all the a lot of the tools that are in use today. But again, if you all as a town have agreements, software and support agreements with those folks, then we can turn around and say, hey, we're having a network issue. Let's work with Cassell to figure out what we need to do to fix the issue.
My greatest concern is with Microsoft and the server.
Yeah, well, I can appreciate that. All I can say is that 99% of our clients are on the Microsoft platform and have adopted that ecosystem. So we have a lot of years and expertise tied up in administrating that. And there are certainly some times where we get into weird situations where we're having to reach out to Microsoft, but it's not too often. And we spend a lot of time and effort training and putting our team through Microsoft certifications to be able to stand on our own 2 feet with having to, because I will say, for the record, Microsoft support is not great.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions from the board? Any further discussion from the board?
Just as an added comment, and just for confirmation, I guess for the record, was that you guys did anticipate this as a cost and accounted it for budget, right?
Yes, we appropriated the funds back in July for this. We brought it to the board, so yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you for answering all of our questions so thoroughly.
I'm so glad you decided to come.
Like I said, if you have any questions, I'm happy to come back and talk to whoever on the record, off the record.
Because I could have handled all that,
Yeah.
you know?
And I understand it's a big move for the town, but I will tell you that you all are taking steps in the direction that a lot of municipalities are. This is not a unique conversation for us to have, and we have a handful of other municipalities, and I'm talking to other municipalities on a fairly regular basis. So you're heading down the right track.
Oh, are you going to send our employees and board members phishing emails so we can see who opens them?
No comment.
I want those free tickets to whatever.
I got free Olympic tickets.
Oh.
The Olympics were almost over.
Don't click on that one.
I've won the lottery many times.
Yeah. So again, that is an area where, as an organization, y'all need to be at least able to prove that you are providing training and engagement in ongoing kind of training of your team in various forms and fashions. So
Thank you.
that's a standard thing we do.
All right.
Okay. Thank you all. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Scott.
If there's nothing further, I'll take a motion on the matter.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Connecting Point for IT services.
I second.
Town clerk, please call for a vote.
Trustee Orcutt?
Yes.
Trustee Nix?
Yes.
Trustee Wakeman?
Yes.
Trustee Beckman?
Yes.
Trustee Lane?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean?
Yes.
Mayor Austin?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the action agenda items. We're going to move into the discussion agenda with the quarterly finance report discussion. I do, before Wade Nickerson, Finance Director, begins, I do want to request that we put on our next work session agenda a discussion about the leash laws in town. I had a citizen send me a very nice video of someone's dog leaving behind a very special present on their grass. And so they're asking for leash laws instead of voice commands. So I think that's something that the board needs to talk about. If we could put that on our next work session, that would be great. Now turning it over to Mr. Wade Nickerson, Finance Director. Please proceed.
Good evening. The 6-month financial discussion is what I'm here for. So what is in the packet are the revenues, the expenditures, and then a little more detail on the general fund. So when you look at the revenues, what I've done is I've given the budget, the revenue, what's remaining, and the percent received of that revenue. And then I've also included an indicator, whether it's good, bad, or something that we sort of need to be watching. A couple things that I want to point out just because of the timing. When you look at the general fund revenues, looks like we've collected 83%, where you would expect us to be a little closer to the 50% mark. That's because of the property taxes. We collect almost all of our property taxes in the first first half of the year. So that's the bulk of that, and that's why that number looks a little higher than what you would expect to be at 50%. The grants fund, that it shows that it's an unfavorable indicator, but what that is that's money that's sitting in reserves that we aren't actually recording that as revenue yet. This is our ARPA money that we haven't spent yet. And so when you look at the financial statements, we haven't actually received that as a revenue during this year, although we do have it as a deferred revenue. So that's why that looks that way. The other one that has an unfavorable indicator is the capital projects fund. Once again, this is most of the revenue in this fund. Part of it comes from sales tax, but about 50% of that is, for this year budgeted, is grant revenue, and we haven't received the grant revenue for that project yet. So although they look unfavorable, we have an explanation for why that is the way it is. But then when you go down the line, we have positive indicators on the water fund, the sewer fund, as well as the debt service fund. Before I go any further, I'd be happy to answer questions on those revenues.
I've got a question. In the grants fund then, why doesn't the revenue show that we have the revenue? Is it because it's in a different fund or something?
So when we receive that money, until we identify the expenditure and spend it, it's a deferred revenue. So it's revenue it's money that we have, but we actually can't spend it until we identify what we're going to use and start spending that money. So we have it, it's in our bank account. We just can't include it as revenue at this point in time.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess
It's accounting, yes, sir.
Is that an auditing thing that you can't?
No,
Like put a star by it that it's and then put a thing down below that it's actually sitting in a different place, but it's available?
It's actually sitting in this fund. It's just, it's deferred. You can't use it until you choose to use it.
Okay.
It's completely a governmental financial piece.
Okay.
It's something that is not typical. Usually when you get grant revenue, you record it. The problem with this was we received it several years before we identified what we're going to use it for, and we still have yet to spend the money. And so we're holding on to it.
Yeah, typically when we go for a grant, we go for a grant for a specific something. This was kind of given to us.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Any other questions on the revenues? Otherwise, we'll move on. So the next page is the expenditures. Same thing. We have budget, we have actual, we have the balance, what percentage has been spent, as well as an indicator. A couple of these are green because we have not spent a lot of money. When you look at the general fund, we have a couple pieces of capital, namely one piece of equipment that is relatively large that we have not purchased yet. And so that's why that one is less than where we'd expect it to be at 50%. The other piece of that is we have some vacancies in personnel. So we're not spending all of that money as quickly as we normally would. When you look at the one unfavorable indicator is in the capital projects fund. Once again, we had a project there. It was 23 3/4, and we have done that project. So we actually spent a lot of money out of that fund ahead of what you would normally typically expect to be about 50%. But because that's a capital projects fund, we don't spend it in a linear fashion. It's very much, a little more jagged up and down when we spend those funds. Okay. Now, if there's questions on the expenditures, I'd be happy to take those.
If the money was spent responsibly, then why mark it unfavorable?
Unfavorable is mostly because generally you look at your financial statements during the year, and you would expect halfway through the year for your expenditures to be somewhere around 50%. And so it's not necessarily unfavorable. It's just something that when I mark it as unfavorable, it brings it to your attention. Hopefully we ask questions and I have explanations as to why it's not in a linear fashion.
Other questions?
Yeah, it could be argued that none of these are unfavorable.
Yeah.
But I think it's more prudent to point out what is abnormal versus what's normal. Okay, so the last piece is the general fund. We generally like to focus on the general fund because this is where the bulk of the taxpayers' money goes, as well as, we spend a lot of money here on public safety and parks and streets and that type of stuff. So once again, starting right at the top, property and sales tax. We collect all of our property tax the first half of the year. So that number is relatively large. When you compare where our current year actual is versus our prior year actual, we are about $526,000 ahead of where we were last year at the same time. The other big one that I wanted to point out on the revenues is the miscellaneous. So the miscellaneous includes interest revenue. We've had some discussions about the interest revenue and where that is. The bulk of that is, number one, the budget on that line item is relatively low versus what we're collecting on interest revenue. And so when you see that the percentage is 299.1%, but what you really should be looking at is our current year actual to the same time last year. It's actually very, very similar. I just want to point that's kind of a big discrepancy there with the interest revenue. And then expenditures, once again, when you go down that percentage line, we're holding very steady. We only have a couple of them that are over the 50% mark. Most of those are very explainable. It comes down to basically two things. Insurance, because we pay our insurance at the beginning of the year. We make our payments to CIRSA for property and casualty and all of those types of things. We do all of that in January. So that skews the numbers a little heavy the first part of the year. And then the other piece, especially in the town board and administration, is we had to buy some software for our website necessities. And so those are a little bit skewed because we pay for that up front rather than on a monthly scale. And the last one I wanted to point out is the public works piece. It's pretty low there at 31.8%. Once again, I spoke earlier about the capital purchase. We have a tandem dump truck budgeted that to the tune of about $375,000 that we have not purchased yet. We're going to get that this year, but it doesn't show up here. And so it looks like we're really low on that line item, but there's an explanation as to why. And then the last piece is the TRPR facilities. That's a one-time payment made annually to help with the payment on the athletic complex. And we pay that in July generally. And so, when you see these reports again next time, that will be 100% spent. And I'd be happy to take questions on that piece.
Questions from the board? No questions?
Okay, thank you.
Nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Nope.
I just wanted to say, I liked the way it was presented. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will continue to send out the full detailed reports to the board. I just wanted to summarize it, make it a little easier to read, a little easier to follow in this setting.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the rest of the reports are written. Is there any board reports tonight to come before the board? No board member reports or meetings?
We had a CJC meeting.
Oh, yes. Can you tell us about it?
It was good.
Well, that's
That
helpful.
was extremely in-depth. Thank you for that analysis.
Thanks. It's really good. So Sylvia actually gives us a nice little report every time we have a meeting on what they're doing. And so Mickle raised $700 at Beef and Bean Day with their jailing of people, and they were also raffling out like a meat package. So we should have had Elizabeth locked up all day.
There was
That was hard.
Could have pulled our
It would
board
have been
money together.
awesome.
Put that in the notes for next year.
Rick is laughing way too hard at that. And so she actually keeps attendance ledgers, and so her attendance for Mickle has been up. She's seen 73 kids in attendance for July. Wow. And in July, so they did a summer feeding program where people in need could come and get lunches on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so in May, they served 200 lunches, 200 families. June, 800 lunches, and in July, 900 lunches. So that's pretty darn good.
Great.
It is. Let's see, what else did she do? So she started a homework club. When did she start that? Like a year?
Yeah, it's been about a year ago.
Yeah. And so in May, that was her last homework club. She had 10 in attendance, but back in February, she had 37. So kids are coming.
So is that different night or than
Yeah,
Mickle?
so Mickle is on
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, and then the homework club is on Thursdays.
Every Thursday.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Same times?
Yeah, right after school. And so, and we've been talking about once the middle school moves to Johnstown, because we're concerned about
The busing
all
and
of our
everything.
Milliken kids all of a sudden being in Johnstown.
I'd be
and-
concerned about that as well.
Yeah, and so JJ at the transportation department, Sylvia's been talking to him about busing the kids to Mickle
that'd
on
be
a
great.
specific bus, and so they're looking into that together. But we've had the dean of students attending our meetings and talking to him about how to keep kids out of the court systems, because we want to try and pull our Milliken kids back from Johnstown. Like if they get in trouble in Johnstown, then they have to go through the court there. But we want to pull them back to do some community service here and some restoration here. So, yeah. Any questions?
Awesome.
No, good
Oh,
report.
that's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other final reports? Any further business to come before the board? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are done for the evening. Thank you. Thank you for the